Checking connections. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Deidre, and I am the author of this book and this book, if you don't know who I am. But today's live stream is for some Q&A about writing and my life in Korea and anything that you want to know. If you are watching the live chat, go ahead and add your questions to the chat. But I do have a list of questions from some of my readers from earlier. And I'm going to hit wave buttons because I like hitting wave buttons. All right. So, let's see. How's everyone doing? So I guess I can start with some of these questions that I have gotten. I actually went ahead and made a list like a professional instead of last time where I was scrambling to find my list of questions. But let's see. I had quite a few questions from Rachie Me. And her first question is best and worst subjects in school. All right, so my best subject in school was English, and my worst subject was everything else. I was not good at anything other than English. And mainly I only liked English because I liked reading and I liked writing, but that was the extent of it. And everything else was like memorizing, and so my brain does not memorize things. So I didn't do well at history. I didn't do well at math. Really bad at math. And then I did really bad at science. I don't remember anything about science. And I wasn't bored during science, I just didn't care. So I had a problem in school that if I didn't care, or if I didn't think it was useful, then I didn't do it. And so that's why my grades were not as good as they could have been, but in the long run it didn't end up mattering anyways. I don't think that was correct grammar whatsoever, but never mind. We won't talk about the fact that I teach English. But I really liked English, and I really liked being creative. So any actually creative classes I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed like art class or music class or singing or anything like that. I really enjoyed that. Anything with the arts. And then another question, current read or book list. So let's see, I finished a few books this month already. I finished a book called Spiritual Warfare Answer Book, and that book was about basically the spiritual realm outside of this dimension. And so it was basically demonology, because my major is half philosophy and half theology, and so demonology is part of that. And so I read a book about demons, basically. So I read a book about demons and how they function. I guess there's also like a book, there's a book, I can't remember the author's name. There's an author that writes, I should look it up. There is an author that writes about the spiritual realm, and he writes about like first of all the separation between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. And then he also has books on like angel organizations and then demon organization, because everything in the spiritual realm is organized according to the Bible. So I'll have to sign into things. No, I don't want to put in my email address. Stop it. I think... No, he's not on my Goodreads. He's on this website that's not letting me in. Rude. I don't know what my email is. That's why it saves my... Let's try this. I'm gonna find it. Aha! Where's my to be read list? I actually did a video recently with my TBR list. It was one of my chaotic vlogs. and I went through all of my... Michael S. Heiser. Demons, what the Bible really says about the powers of darkness, and angels, what the Bible really says about God's heavenly angels. And then he has a book about supernatural, what the Bible teaches about the unseen world, and then the unseen realm, which is the supernatural worldview of the Bible. So, all of those are on my reading list. I actually think one of them came through my Tennessee Reads. So I have an ebook library card, so I think it's on there, so I'll read that pretty soon. But I read the one by David Jeremiah, Spiritual Answer Book, and then I read Lonesome Jar by Dong Hosung. So he's a author from Daegu, and he writes kind of philosophical folktale, Korean folktale type style, and it was really good. I really like his books. And then the last book I read was The Metamorphosis by Kafka. And I read that because it's such like a classic book and I had never read it before. And so I was like, well, I can maybe be cultured and try it out. And so I read it, and it was confusing, and I didn't know what I had just read after I finished. So it was an odd little book. I'm not sure why it has so many star ratings. Because if you don't know that one, it's the one where it's a businessman and he wakes up as a gigantic bug. So he's metamorphosed into a huge bug. And that's how he wakes up, and it's basically his family's reaction and his reaction to becoming a bug. But the ending is dumb, and it's basically, it's a style of writing called surrealism, and surrealism is very strange, and it's very hard to decipher. And so I guess if you're like a literature buff, it's probably something that would really thrill you, but I like more character-driven stories, and I like more, I guess, kind of internal. I like more like good and evil, internal and external, and this was just kind of like reflections of a gigantic bug. So I don't know how to describe that one, but it wasn't my favorite. It's still really weird. I'm still processing it, even though I finished it last week. But right now, my current to-read list is Courage and Calling by Jordan T. Smith. And that's for my theology class, so it's about God's calling on your vocation. And then the other book that I'm reading right now, what is the other book I'm reading right now? I started reading Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. He's a very famous Japanese writer, and his style of writing is pretty good. It's a little hard to follow, but I'm kind of getting it. It doesn't help that I took a break for a really long time, so I should probably go back and reread it. But that's what I'm currently reading. Do you read any webtoons? I don't think I've ever read any webtoons. I haven't read manga either, just because the books are like $10 each, and so I don't have that kind of money, and they're like 20 books, so if you know any good webtoons, let me know. Do you like poetry? Yes, I do like poetry. I actually write a lot of poetry. If you follow me anywhere, you'll see a lot of my poetry. And so, let's see. I really like Baudelaire, Charles Baudelaire. I can't say his name in French correctly, but I like Charles Baudelaire. I like Robert Louis Stevenson. I like Edgar Allan Poe. So I like the more classic gothic-y type novels or type poetry, usually darker stuff. Baudelaire actually translated for Poe, and that's how he started his writing career as a poet. And so Baudelaire and Poe are kind of similar in their darkness. And then Robert Louis Stevenson is just, he's not too dark, but he did write Treasure Island and Kidnapped. And what's his other famous one? He wrote a couple famous ones, but those are the poetries that I like. Just kind of, and some of Robert Frost. He's kind of an American classic. I can't think of any poetry outside of English. So I can't think of like any translated poetry that I've read that I enjoyed. Have I? Baudelaire's translated. He's French. So maybe, I guess. If you know any good poets, let me know. Let's see. What is your inspiration? So my inspiration, I usually all of my ideas come from video games. So if you've seen my live streams before, I've talked about this, but most of my inspiration comes from video games. My background is video game design. Well, at least my major is. I didn't really work in the industry very long, but my background is video games, and so I grew up playing video games. I grew up on Sega Genesis. I grew up on Nintendo, and I grew up playing computer games. Actually, the first game I really got into was Prince of Persia for the PC, and then also I played a lot of Mario and Disney games on Nintendo, and then I played a lot of Sonic and a lot of Disney games also. Also Pitfall on Sega Genesis was awesome. And then I got into just basically all video games. I started collecting consoles and I started collecting games, mostly RPGs. And that's because RPGs are really, really heavily story-based. And so I really like story-based games. It's kind of a way to interact with the story, and so I really like that concept in video games. Is it's taking a story and making it interactive with the reader. And so that's part of the reason these books came out the way that they did, because with these books you read one story and then you you can choose your ending first. So this book has 5 endings you can choose from, and this book has 3 endings you can choose from. And so this was based in my background in video games, because you can get there's a lot of apps for virtual novels these days. And so virtual novels are just novels with really good artwork. And you can interact with the story and kind of make story choices. And sometimes the ending changes and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes nothing changes, sometimes it's just for fun. But I wanted to make a virtual novel, a real novel, which is basically going backwards from making a novel into a virtual novel. But my idea with these books was you can read through the whole thing, and then you can choose your ending, or you can write your own ending. And then I have the deleted scenes from the viewpoints of other characters to fill in the plot holes. And so the idea is video games have a reread value, and so once you finish the game, replay. Video games have a replay value. So when you finish the game, the replay value is how likely is the player going to go back and play the game again. So that's why there's a lot of side quests in video games. That's why there's a lot of extra hidden stuff in video games. It's for the replay value. So you get kind of more for your buck. So you finish the game, you go back, and you can replay again. Some video games even have a function, it's like the plus function. I don't know if they do this anymore, but when I was younger, what they would do is you would finish the game and it would unlock a whole bunch of extra stuff. And so if you went back and played it again, you could keep all your levels, or you could get like extra equipment or something like that. And you could go through the whole game again with your same stats that you had when you finished the game. And so there's kind of like an extra bonus for finishing the game. So my idea with these books was to have kind of a replay value, and so these have a reread value. And so I left some plot holes in the books in the main storyline on purpose. And then you can go back, after you finish the whole book, you can go back and reread the book to re-see how everything really happened. And also, you can see it through the view of different characters, so you get to know the characters more as well. So, that was based on all of my video games. Sorry. The next book I'm writing, or actually the book I've already written, but I haven't published yet, Gods of the Sea. Gods of the Sea is the third book in this trilogy. And so that book will have 4 endings. And so I'm editing that right now. I was editing it a little bit today as well. And I feel just behind in my edits these days, but I am editing it. I'm hoping to get it to some beta readers by the end of this month. And then I have to go through the process of getting an editor. So I might have to do some fundraising for that because editors are really expensive. And I'm only a part-time worker at the moment, so it's a little too difficult for me to get the funds. But I am working on it. It's in the works. And then after that, I won't be writing the Choose the Ending series, at least for a little while, because I have some other ideas. I have a novella I want to write that is actually, well, I have a historical romance about the 1920s Prohibition that I've already completed the rough draft for. So that's also in editing status. So I have Gods of the Sea in editing status. I have my next book after that in editing status. And then I want to start working on 2 paranormal romances. Oh, there's actually a poetry book in between those. So I have like 5 projects lined up that I'm working on. So yeah, so I'll be quite busy. But yeah, 1 historical romance and 2 paranormal romances, and then 1 poetry narrative romance. I don't know how to describe this one, but it's really dark and not gruesome or anything. It's just it's the poetry book is about making a god out of a person. It's basically one-sided love that turns into idolatry. And so I'm working on that. That one's almost finished in rough draft status as well. So I'm excited. There's a lot of projects I'm working on this year. So I'm excited about that. So how do you set yourself up to start writing? And what's your favorite thing to get you in the writing mood? So let's see. Usually the night before I write, I keep hitting the desk and making things shake, I'm sorry. So usually the day before I write, usually I will outline what I'm going to write the next day, and then I go to bed. I go to bed, and then the next morning I usually eat breakfast, and then I make coffee, and then I turn on the Assassin's Creed soundtracks because those are the soundtracks I usually listen to when I write. It really depends which project I'm writing. But most of my books have been Skyrim and Assassin's Creed soundtracks that I've been listening to. So I really like those. Those are really good writing playlists. And then I just kind of set up my desk and just write. So really, I think it's just setting up my coffee, setting up what I'm going to do the next day. That's a really great way to get your brain and body ready to write. So best thing to do is to outline what you'll do the next day, and then coffee and music, and that's basically how I start. I usually do a little bit of reading before that. Sometimes it depends on what I'm doing, and it depends on what I'm reading, because I find that if you read something before you write, it kind of influences your writing a little bit, so you start kind of picking up the writer's style that you just read, And usually I don't want to be writing in their style at that time. I want to be writing in my style. So I usually don't read too much before writing. But reading is part of my morning routine. So I usually read for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, depending on what I'm reading. So sometimes I'll do that, but usually I'll try editing first or writing first before I read, so I'm not influenced by other writers. Let's see. What are some other questions? If you could be gifted in any skill, what would it be? Ooh, I think I would choose music. I would really like to be talented in music. Now, or gifted, I should say. Because talent, if I wanted to be talented in music, I would just have to go study music. But I don't want to study music. Music is really hard. I do have a piano sitting over here. I do play sometimes. Usually, when do I usually play? It's not often enough. It's not often enough. This keyboard is holding some books right now. That's what it's doing. So that's how often I play. And so I'd like to learn music. I'd like to be gifted at music. Music production, I think. It would be cool if I could do music production. I tried it at one time. I tried playing with it. And it was really just too difficult. I didn't know where to start. There was too many pieces. Because you have if you do music production, you use software for it. And so I was trying to learn the software, but it was just too many pieces and it was too overwhelming. And I just had too much going on at the time. And there was no step-by-step tutorial that I could find. It was mainly tutorials specifically for people who knew what they were doing. So I was not one of those people. And so I kind of quit. Not kind of, I really quit. I quit doing music. Actually, that's probably when I stopped playing piano too, come to think of it. So I guess that really discouraged me from pursuing any sort of music. I used to sing in choir in church, and where else is there a choir? But I used to sing in choir at church, and I really liked singing. But the more that I watched singing shows and professional singers and things like that, the more I realized how complex singing and music production really is. And it's just kind of overwhelming, so I just kind of gave up on it and decided just to appreciate it instead. That's all my skills can extend to, is appreciation. I can't really participate as much as I would like to, but it's not like I'm out of hobbies or anything. So I have quite a few hobbies. Usually if my students ask me what are your hobbies, I say everything. And it's true. I have quite a lot of hobbies. So reading and writing's, I don't know if I guess writing is a hobby. Writing's a hobby. I try doing pencil drawings every once in a while. Cooking. I've been doing a lot of cooking this week. So I've been doing a lot of cooking this week, and I've been doing what have I been doing? Coffee. So I went to a cafe. Sorry, my thoughts just died. So I went to a cafe a couple weeks ago, and I had Einspanner, and it's Dutch coffee, and then there's cream on top, and so I wanted to recreate it. And when I tried, it didn't go very well. But it came out okay, but the coffee was just really bitter. So I ended up making kind of an Einspanner with sweet coffee, which is not the point of Einspanner, but I like sweet coffee, so that's what I did. And then I made chocolate sauce, and then I tried to make mocha with the chocolate sauce. I wasn't really a fan. I like drinking chocolate with coffee, not so much coffee with chocolate. And then I made a chocolate cream, and that was really good. And then I made caramel yesterday. So I've been doing a lot of random cooking this week. So, oh, waves. So there's that. And let's see, what are my other questions? Best work. I think that's all from Rachie Me. Yeah, those are all of Rachie Me's questions. Oh, no, there was one more. After publishing Gods of the Sea, do you have future writing projects? Oh, yeah, I talked about those. The paranormal romances and the poetry book. So those are the books I will be working on. I have quite a lot of projects. I was actually thinking a lot about my priorities today, actually, because I did some writing last night, and I started doing writing prompts on my YouTube channel. And so basically it is where I give you a picture, and then you have to brainstorm some words to go with the picture, and that's to kind of get your vocabulary going. And then I have you choose kind of the mood and theme. I have a couple randomizers, and so you use the randomizer and you create a scene from the randomizer and the picture. And so for all of those writing prompts, I do them as well, and then I post what I have written in the comments section. And so I did my latest writing prompt, and I was just writing for 10 minutes and just thinking about how much I enjoy writing and love writing, and just getting into people's brains and writing from a character's point of view and things like that, and just thinking about how, like, this is my top priority. Like, I want to write as many books as humanly possible, and but that just feels like there's so many other things that get in the way. There's my actual job that pays me so I can put food in my mouth, and then there's me trying to do YouTube channel stuff. And the reason I'm doing YouTube channel stuff is, one, because I want to be able to help you guys with all of your writing projects, and there's not any I don't feel like there's any really good, like, step-by-step instructions for writing, just like I couldn't find any step-by-step instructions for music production. And so I wanted to do like a step-by-step guide and help people with their writing, and also it was a really good way to kind of renew my skills in media, because another part of my undergraduate, besides video game design, is also media. And so digital media is the other half of my major, and I've forgotten everything because it's been so long since I graduated, and so I don't remember anything. So I was trying to use YouTube videos in order to kind of review my knowledge, review video production, and review kind of the different elements of digital media, just in case. I like having different skill sets. And so I wanted to do YouTube as a way to do that. I also wanted to do YouTube as a way to practice kind of public speaking and answering questions, things like that. And so I started doing YouTube, and it's really a lot more work than I thought it would be. I don't know, I'm not surprised that it's a lot of work, but I didn't realize how much it would cut into my writing time. And so my idea behind YouTube was hopefully to get enough subscribers and views in order to make an income, and then take that income and put it into book production. So I would have kind of a stream of something stable enough to produce my books, because my main job is not enough to also produce books. Because if you're an indie author, everything you produce is out of your own pocket. So if you work for a traditional publisher, what the traditional publisher will do is they will hire an editor for you. They will hire all of the things that you need, like the cover designer. They'll hire the formatter that formats your books all nice and pretty. They'll buy your ISBNs for you. They'll register your book. It's still technically kind of their property, though. So in order to keep my books completely my property, I have to pay completely out of my own pocket. And it's actually very expensive. If you're interested in being a indie author, you can find ways around it. You can find, I know some indie authors, they will trade books with other indie authors and be each other's editors. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I understand it considering the price of editors. Editors can go anywhere from, I would say probably on the low range, you're probably looking at $500 to $800 at the low range. And then at the higher range, I would say like a book this thick would cost, on the higher range, and it depends on what editor. I should say that there's 3 types of editors as well. If you're having all 3 editors, this book could easily cost like a good $4,000 just for editing. Just for editing. That doesn't include the cover design or anything else. So, but you have 3 developers that you can get. One is the developmental editor. I would recommend that for your first book. What a developmental editor does is they look through your book and they kind of look through the plot and see where the weaknesses are in the plot. They kind of do the bird's eye view. So what is weak in your book? What is the weaknesses of your writing? And then they'll kind of reorganize your book. So my developmental editor actually took full scenes or chapters and moved them. So there's a couple scenes in here that were moved from the original version. And so the developmental editor will do that. They'll fix all the plot holes and things like that. And then you have the line editor. The line editor, I think, is probably the most important and also expensive. But the line editor will go through every single line of your book and make sure it's really consistent. So if your writing style suddenly changes in one of those lines, they'll change it back to more of the writing style that you've been writing as through your book. And so they'll do that. And then the last one is just the proofreader. They fix the commas and the ellipses and the periods and the question marks and quotation marks and all of those things. And they're usually the last ones that you hire, because after you have the line editor, so you have the developmental editor, then the line editor, and then you edit and make sure that everything is the way that you want it. So by this point in the production, you're sick of looking at your book completely because you've written it, and then usually I edit it before, well, you have to write the rough draft, and then you have to edit it before giving it to your editor. Right? Because your first draft is garbage. It'll always be garbage. And it's supposed to be garbage. And so you give it to the developmental editor, they tell you what to fix. And then sometimes the line editor and the developmental editor are the same, and so they'll help you out with that. But you might have to edit it there. And then after the line edit, you have to go back and look through the edits and make sure everything is the way that you want it. With my book, I had some issues with the line editing, so I had to go back and fix those. Then I had to send it back to the proofreader, and the proofreader had to fix all of the commas and stuff. Then after that, I could publish it. And the publishing process after that is you have to get the cover editor and the formatter. You can't get the formatter until you have the book finished, because the page count matters. And so you get the formatter and also the cover editor. Do I get those at the same time? I can't remember. But, because I have to give them the final tally of pages. So yeah, I have to get the formatter first and then the cover editor. And you also have to get the ISBN. You have to register it with the Copyright Office if you are American. I'm not sure what other countries do. I'm sure there's a Copyright Office as well. I keep moving this table. So you can do that, or you have to do that. You don't have a choice. And what else? Some websites have a publishing fee. Amazon doesn't. So Amazon, you can upload your books. There's no fee for that. If you use Ingram Spark, They have a fee for uploading your book. I think BookBaby also does. And I think it's more expensive than Ingram Spark, but I think BookBaby has a better royalty. I think that's the word, royalty. It escapes me right now. They give you more money back for each sale. So it's really up to you what you want to use. I'm still I like Amazon. Amazon works really well. Ingram Spark is better internationally, I think, on some levels, but it doesn't give you a very good return. So I'm still researching some of that. I need to research that before I publish Gods of the Sea. So yeah, it's a long process. So I actually totally forgot what the question was. What was the question I was trying to answer? Oh no. Oh well. So let's see. Let's see. Question from. Let's see. Oh, hello. Question from Find Yourself. Are you treating us with another BTS fan fiction? I don't have any planned at the moment. Mainly because I have too many other books I'm trying to figure out. So I just have what do I have on Wattpad right now? I think I have 4. Yeah, I think I have 4. But they're pretty long. They're full-sized books. So I did those, and then I really want to get into more paranormal romance and things like that. So I have some ideas, and I already have the characters kind of in my head. So I'd like to start doing more non-fan fiction works. But we'll see if there's another one coming. I might have an idea at some point or another and just write it out. So I like kind of playing with fan fiction. It's a good way to kind of have a playground for your creative juices. So let's see. Speaking of Wattpad, Vina Lena asks tips on starting on Wattpad as a beginner with a few followers. So I have just passed 8,800 followers on Wattpad. So, although it's a really good number, so I'm really, really happy. So I'm really glad. My sentence that I just didn't finish was I don't know if I'm really like an expert on Wattpad. The only thing that I really did with Wattpad to get to 8,800 was I just wrote consistently, and so I tried to post once a week, or yeah, just once a week. I didn't try to post more than once a week. I know a lot of people who are really popular on Wattpad, they usually post like 2 or 3 times a week, but that's just not feasible with my kind of schedule. So I tried, my goal was once a week, like every weekend, to write a chapter. And then I just slowly built. It took a couple of years to even get to like 5, what was it? It took me a really long time to get to like, I think it wasn't until I did the 7 Princes, and then I did Marriage of Royal Inconvenience. And after that book, it started picking up. But it took me like a year or 2 to do both of those books. Like, I think it took like a total of 2 or 3 years to do both of those books. And that's when it picked up. And then I did The Rebellion, and then I did Gods of the Sea. And that was kind of when it picked up really fast. So, actually I think Gods of the Sea was when it started to really pick up. So it was only in the maybe last year that it's been picking up. So I've been doing it for a while because I was still living in Tennessee. When I wrote The 7 Princes, because I was practicing writing. So the reason I wrote The 7 Princes is because my job at the time, I wrote another book before that, and so I wanted someone to read it and kind of give me feedback. I needed a beta reader, and I wasn't signed up on Wattpad at the time. And so my boss's son read it and gave me feedback, and he told me to work on, he said I wasn't feeling the romance between the two main characters. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to practice that. So I wrote the Seven Princes. So I used to practice romance writing. That was the whole point of the Seven Princes, is I wanted to practice romance writing. And I figured out that the reason I didn't do well at romance writing in the first book I wrote, that I haven't published anywhere, because it's really not that good. I figured out the reason my romance was so bad in that first book was because I wasn't allowing myself to be vulnerable enough, I guess. So the thing with romance writing is it's extremely, extremely vulnerable. I don't feel like science fiction or fantasy is even as vulnerable as romance, because romance is literally you taking your fantasies and your romantic fantasies and putting them on paper, and it's absolutely terrifying. And so I really always loved romantic stories. So I love Disney stories. I love the Prince and the Princess kind of stories. I love, like, if I watched a movie when I was younger, which I don't really watch movies now, but when I watched movies when I was younger, I had to have romance in that movie or I didn't care. Like, if that movie didn't have romance, I wasn't interested. If it had romance and a sad ending, I still wasn't interested. So I wanted happy romance with a happy ending. I wanted to feel like there was love and hope for everybody. That was kind of my thing. And then I got really into like Korean dramas, and Korean dramas are like extremely like angsty, but still kind of a like, I liked them because they were so character focused. So if you didn't have the characters' personalities the way that they were, then there was no story. And the whole, like, there's a lot of Korean tropes, and Korean dramas get a whole lot of flack for it because you have like the stone cold, heartless millionaire or whatever, and that's always how they come out. So they're always like, there's always the second male lead who's the nice guy, and then the first male lead who's just cold-hearted. But the thing about those kind of characters is they have like a really strong character arc, and so the cold-hearted millionaire usually goes through a whole like change of perspective, and so I really liked that. And that really doesn't happen very much in American romances. Like, there's not like a character arc for the male or the female. They just kind of meet and fall in love, and then there's like a dragon. Then they can't be together, and then they fight the dragon, and then they're together. But I feel like in Korean dramas, it's more like the dragon is kind of like your own boundaries that you've set for yourself and your own perspectives. And so I liked that much better. It seemed deeper. So I wanted to write romance like that. And in order to write romance, you have to put kind of your most vulnerable thoughts on paper. And it's quite terrifying. So there are a lot of genres of romance. And I kind of, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of romance I don't like reading, because it's really tropey, and it's not really as deep as I want. Like, I don't need something really epically life-changing, because I read a lot of virtual novels, and those aren't really like life-changing type stories. But they don't really feel, they feel kind of, it feels like there's no character arc. It's the same problem I have with movies now, is it just doesn't feel like the characters grow. It feels like the same character. There's no like change of perspectives. So I feel like romance is a really, really good way to kind of look at the internal person, because every person you fall in love with changes you completely. And so, but we don't really talk about that as much. We just like, the romance will just be like, oh, two like amazing people come together and whatever. It's not really exciting. It doesn't show the change that really happens internally when you meet somebody. So I want to write stories like that. So, which is why a lot of my stories are really angsty. So, hello, Vina Lena. Thank you for all the hearts, Ariba. So many hearts. So yeah, that's my answer to your question, Vinalina. Actually was talking about Wattpad, so yeah. So if you're a beginner on Wattpad, I would say be consistent. So write consistently, post consistently. Doesn't matter if it's once a week or once a day, although I wouldn't try to go for once a day if you're a beginner, because it's just too overwhelming. It's too much. So once a week is pretty good. Usually when I write a book for Wattpad, I write 5 to 10 chapters first, and then I start posting, and I only post one chapter a week. So that gives me time to, so it lights a fire under me, number one, because I don't have a lot of time to kind of piddle around. But it also gives me enough time to kind of sort out the story, because sometimes I'll write like 3 chapters and realize, oh, this doesn't really work for these characters. I need to go back and change it. And so I'll write like 5 chapters ahead so I can go back and make sure it's consistent. So that's why if you followed me for a long time, and I think with Gods of the Sea I did this quite a few times, is I posted the wrong chapter because I had labeled them wrong. So I think I posted like chapter 7 and 8, or I forgot to post chapter 7 and 8. I just skipped them completely because I had already written them and I had labeled them incorrectly, and I forgot to go back and put them on Wattpad correctly. So that was my mistake. But that's why if you see me do something like that, it's because I've written ahead, but it's only the rough draft. It's really, really nasty. It's not like really good writing yet. And so I write ahead so I make sure the plot works, and then I go back and fix it so I can post it for you guys. So that's what I do with that. But yeah, enjoy Wattpad. I know there's a lot of random stuff on Wattpad. Some of it's really good, and there's a lot of beginners, and that's totally fine. So like, writers have to start somewhere. So like, even I feel like there was a lot of problems with my first Wattpad story, and it has like 2 million views now, but I still feel like it could have been better. And then I rewrote it, and I still feel like it could be better, honestly. Actually, you know what, as a writer, I feel like every time you write anything, you'll finish it and be like, that could have been better. But I guess that's just part of being an artist. I was talking about this with someone recently. When you start like a project, an art project or writing project, you always have like this vision of it in your head, and then you start to do it, and it comes out completely different and not the way that you imagined at all. And then when you finish, you still feel like it isn't quite finished. And the only reason I try not to reread my books, at least in their final form. I'll go on Wattpad and I'll read them, but I won't read them in their final form because I feel like I'll want to go and fix them if I do that. So I'll be like, oh, I should have changed this sentence and all this other stuff. So I try to make it a rule not to read my finished book more than one time. Because then I'll try to go back and change it. I actually keep thinking about going back and refixing this one, because there's some lines in there that just bother me, and I have to remember that I see it, but maybe the readers don't, and it's not the majority of the book. So it's just a few sentences. It'll be fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's done. Move on to the next thing. So I feel like that's part of the author's curse. Is even when you finish the story, you're just like, oh, it could have been better. And then it's always more epic in your head. And it comes out completely different, but people enjoy it anyways. So if you're starting on Wattpad, just be a beginner. Just let yourself be a beginner. It's fine. You have to start somewhere. Let's see. I have 2 more questions, unless you guys throw some in the comments. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'll answer. But let's see. Sunnyside asks, when writing, how do you develop your characters so it feels well-paced and not rushed? So that will be dependent on the events in the story. So when you develop characters, first you have your characters at kind of their starting point in the character arc. So what are their views, and what are their perspectives on life, and what are their relationships like, and what are their views on relationships like. And you start with that, and then you have a series of events. And the idea with storytelling is each event is supposed to challenge the character. And so when that character is challenged, their personality changes slightly. And what you should do with a good story is the characters, the events that the characters go through are somehow or another unavoidable or a consequence of something they did. So if a character, it should all be cause and effect. So there's no way for this character to avoid it, or this character made a terrible decision and they have to kind of redeem themselves, something like that. And so, yeah, the way that you keep the pace is to have the cause and effect consistently. And so that should, with each event, your character should grow the way that they're supposed to. They can't just like flip a switch and be a new person. They have to process things and process events and process thoughts. And so each event should help them process their thoughts, and your character will either adapt to that challenge or they will die in that challenge. So that's kind of like, that should be the stakes, honestly. It should be either adapt to the situation or lose everything. That should always be the stakes. It should always be as high as humanly possible. High and complex. And the best storytelling is when like one decision is bad and the other decision is bad, and so the character has to choose between like terrible and terrible. And because that happens a lot in real life. So what readers want when they come to a story like that is to see a character overcome a challenge, because it helps them remember that they too can overcome challenges as well. Michelle asks, how are you? I am good. It is Sunday in Korea. So I have done basically nothing today. So it's not a bad day. All right. And I think, yeah, my last question that I have. Ghost Anonymous asks, how can I improve my writing style so that I can be like you? So I have answered similar questions before on Wattpad, and my answer is always, don't be like me. Because you're supposed to become the writer that you are, not the writer that I am. But I can help you improve your writing style, since that's your real question. So to improve your writing style, I just put a post about this on my Instagram. But to improve your writing style, you should lean into what you really, really enjoy. So what makes you a unique writer is your interests in whatever it is you're interested in. So my interests are Gothic novels, classic novels, dark poetry, things about the spiritual realms, and the Bible, ethics, good and evil, military strategy, fighting. I have 11 years martial arts experience. I'm getting my master's in philosophy and theology. And so my combination of interests is what makes my writing unique. So most of my writing is about good and evil internally and externally. And so it's about people fighting their inner demons. That's what I write about. And so that's what makes me a unique writer. What makes you a good writer is being vulnerable enough with your thoughts and perspectives and all of that. Usually with my characters, what I try to do is make them all have different perspectives and then put them in the sandbox of whatever world I've created and let them fight. And that's usually what a book is. So my characters usually have different viewpoints for very good reasons. And so some readers like that, some readers don't. And so like in the Rebellion, I have a character, and what's his name? I forget my characters' names all the time. Why do I forget their names? They're my children. Why? Kangde. Yeah, Kangde. Sorry, Kangde. So I have a character in here, Kangde, and Kangde is kind of the leader of a anti-government group. It's like a gang group, and he doesn't like, basically he doesn't like any women fighting in the front lines. He's okay with them in the back lines, but he doesn't like them in the front lines. And the idea, his perspective I actually got from a news interview that I watched, and they were talking about letting women into the army to fight on the front lines. And they were interviewing people on the street, and this was the American Army. And they were interviewing people on the streets, and there was a lot of different perspectives. But there was one younger man, I think he was like in his 20s, he was much younger. And so, but when they interviewed him, they said, what do you think about women fighting on the front lines? And he said, well, if women are on the front lines, then what are we fighting for? And so that was really just such a different perspective. And like, I'm a martial artist. I know how to fight. I'm very secure in the fact that I can fight. I don't have to prove it. I don't have to say I'm as good as a man or whatever, because I already know that I am. And I've already been, and my sparring partners have confirmed. So I don't have to prove anything. And so I wasn't really offended at that at all. I was just really interested that someone had that kind of perspective. And so I wanted to kind of explore that perspective. And so I created Kangde. And that's kind of how I create characters, as I take perspectives. They might not be mine. So a lot of my characters are very, very different. And some of them I agree with and some of them I don't. And I feel like that makes it more interesting because I get to explore different ideas as a writer. And so, so some of my reviewers didn't like Kangde very much, but I like Kangde a lot, actually, and I like his interesting viewpoints on things. And so, so that's kind of the fun thing of being a writer, is you get to look at different perspectives. And to circle back to the question, your writing style is going to be contingent on your own perspectives. And if you try to just take other people's perspectives and shove them into your writing, it's not going to be very good. And I don't mean like, I don't mean taking other people's perspectives and exploring them. I mean taking other people's perspectives and writing only in that perspective because you think it will make a good story. So pretending that it's yours when it's not really yours. If you put in like your real raw perspectives, or just kind of explore it, you're not trying to please anybody, is basically what I'm saying. Don't try to please the reader, try to engage the reader, or try to provoke the reader, maybe, because there's books that do that too, and there's some really dark characters out there. And so just when you're writing, take everything that you come in contact with. So take other people's perspectives and explore them, or take your perspectives and explore them, or anything like that. So in order to be a really good writer, you have to give your characters life, basically, if you're writing fiction. And you have to do it in a way that is true to your own vulnerability, and not trying to meet a trope, and not trying to people please the masses, because that's not good art, really. It might make you money, but I don't think it's really good art. And most people in the business really don't like that sort of thing. And I don't think it will make you very memorable. It might make you popular for a short time, but I don't think it'll make you memorable. If you want to be a memorable writer, most memorable writers were very offensive for their time, and just very direct and blunt, and just raw. They had no, they didn't withhold real humanity. And I think that's what makes a really good writer. But, I mean, it depends on what genre you're writing. I guess you probably wouldn't do that so much if you're writing children's fiction. So it depends on what you're writing. But that would be my advice. I have some questions. What do you see first from a story as a reader? Is it the plot or something else, Michelle? Let's see. Usually, so there is a channel on YouTube called Film Courage, and they talk about something related to this. And basically, people remember characters, but they don't remember plot that well. So if you have really strong characters, that will be more important to your plot. If you have a really strong plot and terrible characters, people won't remember your story at all. And that's kind of a sad fact. But people fall in love with characters, or they at least connect to characters. And I think that's the first thing that readers notice, is can they connect to the character? Not even if they really like them, but can they identify with them? Or have they gone through a similar struggle? Or do they have a similar fantasy or something like that? Something they can connect with. So the best type of characters are characters that you can universally connect to. And so, for example, if your character is struggling with their parents accepting them, that's kind of a theme through a lot of children's movies. Parents don't accept you, or you can't make any friends, or you're in a new place and you're lonely, or you've just suffered a loss, something like that. So if people find a character that they can connect to, you're probably better off. Plot, people do care about plot. If you have terrible plot holes, or if you have just plot that skips or doesn't make any sense, because remember, reality doesn't make sense, but fiction has to. So plot is important, but if you have good character development, your plot should be okay. Because if you have good character development, your readers should be watching the character grow, and so whatever events happen and the characters react, that should be the rest of your plot. So there should be one big event and the characters reacting to that, and all of the events that happen because of that should be your story. And then there's a resolution. So I think from a reader's perspective, connection to the character is most important, and then a well-developed character. Because a well-developed character will flesh out your plot much better. Let's see. Ariba says, I have a literature test tomorrow. Any advice for me? I can't remember my last literature test. I teach English as a second language, so we don't have tests, actually. Literature tests, I'm trying to remember them. It's usually stuff like symbolism, right? It's stuff like symbolism, and what did the writer mean when they wrote ... which I always find funny, because I'm like, did you interview the writer? Did they actually say that's what it meant? If you know what books you'll be quizzed on or what literature you'll be quizzed on, go to SparkNotes and review there, because you've probably already read the book anyways. And honestly, even if you haven't read the book, just go to SparkNotes. I did that. Literature test. I don't know, it depends on the book. To be honest, there was a lot of literature in like my English classes in high school that I just didn't read. They were just so bad. I feel like in high school, all of our books was basically just tragedy, and then the main character dying at the end. I feel like that was every single book we ever read in high school. So they'll probably ask you stuff like, how could they avoided this conflict, or something weird like that. So symbolism, I'd say just go with your gut. I don't even remember literature tests. It's been so long. When was my last literature test? 2002? 20 years ago. It's mostly poetry and figurative devices. Okay. So it'll be stuff like, what is a metaphor? What is a simile? What is personification? What is automatopoeia? Things like that. My advice for simile and metaphor. Metaphor does not have like or as. Simile compares things using like or as, and you can remember that because simile has an I and like has an I. That's how I remembered it. Like has an I, simile has an I. So simile uses like and as. He's tall like a skyscraper. Metaphor is not he is a skyscraper. And then personification, things compared to a human that are not human. So like a tree laughing or shaking. Shaking could be plants, but like a tree laughing or something, like fire dancing. I used that one a lot when I was younger. The fire is dancing. Fire can't dance, but it's personification. It's making it a person. So, oh, my neck. I think that's just mostly memorizing, isn't it? For figurative language. It'll probably be stuff like, what does this metaphor mean? And what does this mean? And or analogies. So, poetry is really difficult to like quiz, because everyone has a hard time, even scholars have a hard time interpreting poetry. So, because I've taught a little bit of poetry in some of my classes, and it's hard just to find materials, because a lot of people just don't know what any poems mean, and the author doesn't explain it. There's also classical musicians used to do that too. So classical musicians, what they would do, like Tchaikovsky and things like that, they would write symphonies and say, hey, there's a secret theme in the symphony, and then they would never tell you what it is, and then they died, and we still don't know what any of those themes are. So you're supposed to guess. But I find that obnoxious. Just tell me what you meant. I actually want to create like commentary. This is kind of a side project that I have in my head, but I would kind of like to write commentary about these books and kind of write through the process of creating the characters and why I did things in certain chapters, and kind of extracting some of the passages and explaining them, and then explaining why the characters are a certain way, and explaining more about the development and all of that, and their arc and those sort of things. I kind of want to do that just because I basically want to write my own spark notes for my books, just so I can clarify as the writer what I meant. And so no one's trying to sit there and be like, oh, well, maybe this means this. And and whatever. And that's fine if you interpret it your own way. I'm not mad about that. But the thing is people will really like, some people will really read into things in books that aren't there whatsoever. And so I don't mind people coming up with their own theories, but I would like to have kind of like a place you can go and be all like, this is the truth of this passage. This is the truth of this part of the book. So I'd kind of like to do that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you be interested in something like that? So it would just be, if I did it, it would just be like a free download from my website or something. I wouldn't charge for it. But I think that would be a fun project. Just to kind of revisit why I did things. And also kind of give writing tips along the way on how to write your own stuff and kind of get into the mind of an author and how they plan out things. So, I don't know, I thought it would be a useful tool. So, all right. Let's see, it's 11 o'clock now. Are there any other questions? Oh. I drank 2 cups of coffee today, and it really didn't do as much as I thought it would. You know what, though? It's probably going to hit me as soon as I lay down. And I'll just stare at the ceiling till 4 a.m. That's when it's going to hit me. But I found that black coffee makes me sleepy. And I don't know why, and I'm kind of angry about it. Because I can't keep drinking sweet coffee. Maybe I'll try iced coffee tomorrow. I have some cold brew. I'll try that and see if that makes me sleepy as well. Because recently I've been drinking a lot of whipped cream because I've been trying to make Einspanners, and my pants are not happy. So I need to go back to like 0 calorie. So, oh, but now I'm hungry. All right, well, I guess that's it for this Q&A. I will post another one, and I will also advertise it more this time. I don't know. I posted it. I forgot how long ago I posted it, but I was going to advertise it more, and for somehow it just slipped my mind. So I'm going to go ahead and plan the next one, and then I'm going to plan advertising so it doesn't like sneak up on you guys. Because I think I announced it like once and then never again. Because I'm terrible at business, and I'm sorry. I need a manager. If I could become famous enough to have a manager, that would be wonderful, because I cannot keep track of myself. I have planners everywhere, and I still forget everything, because I need a second person. I can't be one person and do my life. I need 2 people to do my life. If that makes any sense. But thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I will see you next time. I think the next one, maybe I won't announce it here. I think, yeah, I usually try to do Q&As on the second to last Sunday of the month. I don't know why I choose that day, but it just seems to work out the best. So I try to do it on a Sunday. If you guys have a different day that's better, let me know. I am in Korean time, so I know that makes it difficult as well, especially if you're in the United States. I don't think anyone in the United States comes to these. Maybe I could do another one in the morning sometime for the other side of the world crowd. So I don't know. We'll see what I do. I'm not even advertising the one, so we'll see what I do. But if you like a different day or a different time, or let me know. If you have any questions, if you're watching the playback, because I will be putting this up on YouTube and my Instagram. So if you're watching the playback, you can put questions in the comments, or you can just DM me comments or questions, whatever they're called. You can DM me questions, and then I will answer them on the next live stream. So something like that. I have more YouTube videos coming. I'm working on those, but I'm also trying to finish Gods of the Sea. My editing is so close, so I really just want to get that finished first, so I can get it to my beta readers, so I can get to producing it. So, but I do have a schedule. I'm trying to keep to it. Stay tuned. There's lots coming. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys later. Peace.